Good morning, students. In this class, I will be discussing the postmodernist elements in the movie Akira. First of all, about the movie Akira, it came out in the year 1988. It is an animated Japanese movie that resides in the cyberpunk subgenre because of its futuristic setting, which juxtaposes an ever advancing technological world with a human world that is fast degenerating and where social order is disappearing entirely. This film is hugely influenced by early cyberpunk films from the late 1960s and 70s, such as Blade Runner. The film is directed by Katsuhiro Otomo and was released in 1988 and was the most expensive Japanese anime at the time it was made, with a budget of $9 million or just over 1 billion yen. And this film became a cult sensation almost overnight and gathered an enormous following worldwide, which changed anime forever. So, this is a summary of the film. It is set in Neo Tokyo of 2019, which is reconstructed after World War III. And instead of the peaceful Tokyo it once was, the country is now haunted with gang violence and terrorism. Chaos and anarchy pervades, which coexist with corruption of ruling elites. The main character Kaneda is the leader of Bosoku gang, a biker gang, together with his close friend Tetsuo. And when they fight against their enemies, Tetsuo is harmed and he acquires telekinetic psychic abilities when he crashes against another psychic, also known as Espers. And the gang is taken by the Japanese self-defense forces before they manage to run away with the help of Kei, a resistance member. And later it is revealed that Tetsuo's abilities are as strong as Akira's, which is the person that destroyed Tokyo the last time. And Tetsuo is recaptured as he is hallucinating and suffers from headaches. And Espers, those kids, fears Tetsuo as being an adult can abuse the great power that comes to him. And when Kaneda tries to help, he ends up attempting to fight Tetsuo back as he is unstable and aggressive. And Tetsuo manages to escape and searches for Akira's remains, which is supposed to enhance his powers, which is located under the Olympic Stadium. And in that attempt, he kills one of his former gang members, which angers Kaneda. And when the military and Kaneda reach Tetsuo, he overpowers them, though they manage to injure him in his right arm. The military powers and Kaneda continue approaching, and Tetsuo loses his control over his powers. And the colonel fires an orbital weapon at Tetsuo, destroying his arm, but Tetsuo destroys the weapon. He later consumes all the masses and objects in proximity and he starts growing. And we see Espers deciding to awaken Akira, who has the power to stop Tetsuo. And Akira creates a singularity, drawing Tetsuo and Kaneda into another dimension. And here, Espers teleport the colonel to a safe distance as the singularity destroys Neo Tokyo. They agree to rescue Kaneda as well, knowing that they will not be able to return to this dimension as a result. And Kaneda sees how he and Tetsuo were close friends when they were younger, before the destruction of Tokyo. The Espers then managed to get Kaneda back from the singularity to the world where Tokyo is destroyed. They manage to survive, and Tetsuo makes a big bang, which makes him God in a parallel universe. So, this is the final shot in the film showing Tetsuo declaring, I am Tetsuo in a parallel world. So, now let us move into a detailed analysis of the movie. First of all, the movie as a dystopian cyberpunk. Akira is a movie with several themes set in a dystopian cyberpunk society. And dystopia, as you know, is an imagined state or society in which there is great suffering or injustice, typically one that is totalitarian or post apocalyptic. And cyberpunk is technologically superior but socially decaying society. And here, what you see is human life in Neo Tokyo is degrading despite all the technological advancements. All those social structures are slowly eroding, and this can be seen in the daily life of the kids as they are street vigilantes and through the bad schooling they have. Now, about the use of popular culture and medium in the film. Befitting a popular culture, the cinema liberally takes in popular culture elements. It uses a popular manga series, which is a comical style popular in Japan, and engages with cartoon, which is usually a medium which is child centric, and it uses this medium to tell an apocalyptic narrative. Being a postmodernist movie, it completely rejects all those meta narratives like science and reason. Film here presents a skepticism towards the grand narrative of science, which is, as you know, is a characteristic of postmodernism itself. This gets reflected in the dystopian vision of future as shown in the film. The film rejects the linear progression of society. Social regression can happen even after. The point is, social regression can happen even after technological revolutions. Now, about the fluidity of identities. As per the ethos of postmodernism, nothing is concrete and all identities are fluid. In the film, identities are self constructed and can be fluid, and the ascribed identities are rejected. The countercultural identities like biker gangs are assumed. Tetsuo and his metamorphosis through different identities is a perfect example of this fluidity of identity. Now, about the intertextual elements in the movie. Four different historical signifiers from different eras used in the film, creating an historical pastiche. There is this dark valley period, which is between 1931 to 41 of pre-war Japan, when right-wing military factions combined with industrialists and vied with politicians for political control of the country. And there is this dropping of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, references to Tokyo Olympics, which happened in 1964, references to political unrest and student demonstrations in 1960 against the revision of US Japan Security Treaty. And Akira is a text which is simultaneously displaying two distinct characteristics of the postmodern, which the critic Frederick Jameson discussed. First one, it is the effacement of boundaries. For instance, there is effacement of boundaries between previously defined stylistic norms, Eastern and Western, and between past and present, resulting in pastiche and parody. And then there is a schizophrenic treatment of time as perpetual present. Here, past, present, and future blends together, coalesce together, denying any fixed time scale. And the elements of pastiche in this film. Pastiche is also engaged in the mixing of various cinematic styles and cinematic styles of Japanese drifter cinemas of 1960s. Here it is blended with the styles of cyberpunk movies of 80s like Blade Runner. And fragmentation of narrative in the movie. The film revels in fragmentation. It resists any unidirectional flow of narration. It also resists any narrative closure and have an extended middle, rejecting the conventional narratives. In this method, any sense of narrative sequence is subordinated to the requirement of creating images of the spectacular. There is no one central character, and the narrative relies on multiple set of characters, and their actions reduce the film to montage a montage of multiple patterns of action. Overall, there is a sense of fragmentation and disruption in narrative flow. You can see the fast editing there. The fast editing, the dislocation of narrative sequence, and the disruption of the diegesis produce the sensation of fragmentation of images where meanings are disjointed and referential. Here, the film makes no attempt to place the images of violence and destruction with any logical form of cause and effective narrative. So, the effect of this technique is to encourage the spectator to identify with Kaneda, whose knowledge of the causes of this chaotic world in which he exists is at best fragmentary. Now, the elements of hyperreality in this movie. Through the techniques of fast editing and others listed above, the film reproduces a sense of flow throughout. The soundtrack, you might have listened to the soundtrack, it enhances the sensual imperative of the images. It emphasizes the sensual experience of movement, and it is not in any sense representations of the real. They are images of what Baudrillard has called hyperreal. Here, the hyperreal effaces the contradictions between the real and the imaginary. The sensuous imperative of these images become our experience of the event depicted. The film reproduces futuristic images of a city in the age of simulation, where science now bear no relation to reality. So here the concept of hyperreal also applies to the historical signifiers as well. So these are the points to be noted when you study Akira. I hope it is clear. Thank you. Have a nice day.